I didn't really want to quit working for her. I got a good feeling out of earning 3 quarters and 2 gallons of milk a week. It made me feel good to be able to give Adeline and Julia each a quarter, and then have one for myself. When school started again, things were still pretty rough, so Mrs. Johnson got one of her friends, Mrs. Claiborne, to give me a job. Mrs. Claiborne taught home economics at the night school. I worked for her every evening after school and all day Saturdays. I really liked this job because I made almost as much as Mom. Mrs. Claiborne paid me $3 a week, and the work was easy compared to what I had been doing for 75 cents. Now, I could pay our way to the movies every Saturday and then give Mama $2 to buy bread and peanut butter for our lunch. Besides that, I was learning a lot from Mrs. Claiborne. She taught me what a balanced meal was and how to set a table and how to cook foods we never ate at home. I've never known anything about having meat, vegetables, and a salad. I enjoyed learning these things, not that they were helpful at our house. For instance, we never set a table because we never had but one fork or spoon each. We didn't have knives and didn't need them because we never had meat. Mrs. Claiborne was in charge of selling candy, peanuts, and hot dogs during the Friday night football and basketball games at her school. On Saturdays when I went to work, she would give me the leftover wieners and some of the peanuts and candy. Now, when I got off work on Saturdays, I'd run all the way home with what she had given me. Adeline and Julia would be sitting out in the street waiting on me. I'd give them some of the peanuts and candy and take the wieners to Mama. On Sundays, she'd make them for us. The wieners and the $3 a week that I earned kept us from being hungry at school and at home. Mrs. Claiborne's husband was a businessman. The only thing I knew about businessmen at the time was that they carried briefcases, smoked cigars, and wore suits every day. Mr. Claiborne was nice, so I thought all businessmen were nice. One Saturday, I was setting the table for them, and he asked me to set up a place for myself. I sat down with them, the first white people I had ever eaten at the same table with. I was so nervous. We sat in silence eating. Dessert was served, and then they started talking to me. Essie, how do you like school? Mr. Claiborne asked. Oh, it's all right, I answered. What kind of grades you make? He asked. I make A's in everything but arithmetic, and I make B's in that, I said. See, I told you she's very smart, Mrs. Claiborne said. What would you like to do after you finish school, Essie? He asked. I don't know. Mama said I could be a teacher like Mrs. Claiborne and Mrs. Johnson, I said. Mr. Claiborne just nodded his head. When I was doing the dishes, Mrs. Claiborne came to help me, and she told me that Mr. Claiborne thought that I was very smart. She said that she didn't know many 10-year-old girls who worked to keep herself and her sister and brother in school. After that Saturday, I ate with them every time I was there for a meal. They started treating me like I was their own child. They would correct me when I spoke wrong, and Mrs. Claiborne would tell me about places she had traveled and people she met while traveling. I was learning so much from them. Sick or well, I went to work. I was afraid if I stayed home, I would miss out on something. I came home from work one day, and it seemed as though Mama's belly had gotten big overnight. I knew she was going to have another baby, and I also knew it was for Raymond. Now that she had gotten fat, he wasn't coming by anymore. He hadn't been to the house in almost a month. Again, Mama started crying every night, like she did when Junior was a baby and my daddy was staying with Florence all the time. Then I thought Raymond had left her for that yellow woman his people wanted him to marry. When I heard Mama crying at night, I felt so bad. She wouldn't cry until we were all in bed and she thought we were sleeping. Every night I would lie awake for hours listening to her sobbing quietly in her pillow. The bigger she got, the more she cried. And I did too. I cried because I thought she would make me quit school and work full time for Mrs. Claiborne to take care of all of us. It seemed as though any day she would have to quit work. I had worked late for Mrs. Claiborne one evening, and when I got off work, it was raining. I didn't have an umbrella or anything. By the time I got home, I was soaking wet. I was so mad because I had on my first new dress in almost 2 years. Mama had bought 5 yards of beautiful pink flowered material for $1 at the bargain store. She had a lady make dresses for me and Adeline. We had both worn our dresses to school that day. Now, mine was all wet and had lost its newness. All the way home, I was thinking about my wet, sagging dress and Adeline's new dress hanging against the wall, still looking new. When I walked in the door, Mama was singing. I forgot about my wet dress. Instead of looking depressed and sick as usual, she seemed so happy. Dripping wet, I stood in the door a long time just looking at her. I didn't know why she was happy, and I didn't really care. I was just glad to see her like this. She was walking around, carrying her big belly like it was as light as a feather. "Take that wet dress off before you get a cold," she said, as she noticed me standing in the door. Any other time, she would have said something like, "Look how wet you is. Why didn't you wait till it stopped raining?" That night, I listened to see if she would cry, and she